a lot of these formations, and as you mentioned, the shields, and especially the sheer number of shields that you can see here, is so unique and so special.
Yes, exactly. And it's all because of the magic of the water of the Great Basin.
This is the Exploring the National Parks podcast with Dirt in My Shoes. My name is Ash, and I'm a former park ranger and the founder of Dirt in My Shoes. I think that the parks are best seen from the trail, and I'm here to make national park trip planning easy.
And I'm John. I carry the kids on the trails, I tell stories, and notice all the things that Ash doesn't care about much, like flowers.
Join us as we show you around America's spectacular national parks.
We're sharing our favorite places, fun facts, adventures, and misadventures.
And we'll even throw in a little trip planning.
Let's start exploring.
Happy Thanksgiving, everyone. We're so excited that it's the holiday season.
So excited. I love this time of year.
I know. We're not going anywhere, really, for Thanksgiving. But actually, that's not true. We're going to Cedar Breaks National Monument.
That's true. That is so true.
Kind of as a side, because we're going to be in the area. But yeah, we've been there before. It's actually super cool. It's like a mini Bryce Canyon.
It's so pretty.
So I know. And it's funny. I think the only time I've ever been there is around this time of year. And there's not like a lot to do because it's usually pretty snowy. It's at like 9,000 feet above sea level. Maybe
true.
even 10,000. It's so high.
I think the first national monument we ever went to together was Cedar Breaks because we went to Cedar City, which is nearby, with your whole extended family to the Thanksgiving buffet.
I know. Every few years, although it has stopped, but we used to get together as a whole extended family, and this is the first year we're starting it up again. I'm actually really excited.
I've missed that buffet.
I know. We're not doing the buffet. We used to go to a restaurant in Cedar City, and we'd do a buffet for Thanksgiving because nobody likes to cook. But we're not doing that this year, but we are doing a few new things, so actually pretty excited about that. It should be really fun. Also, with Thanksgiving comes the Black Friday sale at Dirt in My Shoes.
The only time of year where this happens.
The only time. I know. I have people ask me all the time, do you ever put your itineraries on sale? The only time I put all the itineraries on sale is my Black Friday sale. So if you're looking to get an itinerary, especially for next travel season, this is like the perfect time to get it so that you're ready for, January 1, when all these parks start making you have reservations. You're having to get into that whole process again, even to enter the parks, like all that stuff starts up. But the itinerary will get you ready for that. So grab your itineraries. If you are not on the email list, go join the email list. That's where I announce this whole sale. And I haven't decided yet if I'm doing a coupon code or if I'm just going to put them all on sale so you don't have to put in a coupon code. But if it's a coupon code, you need to be on the email list.
Right. So hedge your bets depending on what Ash decides to do here.
I know. It really just depends. I'll decide later today. But yeah, we got to get that going. So head over to dirtinmyshoes.com/list. You can sign up for the reservation list, and that will get you on my email. And then I will give you all the information you need about the Black Friday sale. So super excited about that. It really does jumpstart your trip planning for the new year.
It helps so much.
So yeah, go grab them while they're all 20% off. It's the only time I put them all on sale at the same time. So anyway, happy Thanksgiving and happy Black Friday. And today we're jumping into something that's totally unrelated.
Yes, that is very true. And the way we're going to start is even further unrelated from what we just talked about.
I feel like we're really good at that, though. We'll bring it around. Don't you worry.
Trust me, I am your guide through this, and we will end up in the right place.
Eventually.
It just...
A few tangents here or there. We'll have some laughs.
We'll take the scenic route.
Yes.
For sure.
Always.
Okay, so today's episode, we're doing the fun facts episode for Great Basin National Park. And this is such a great national park. Oh my gosh, I absolutely love it. But in order to fully understand Great Basin National Park, we might need to sing a song.
Oh, no. Okay.
We won't sing the whole song. We might not even get past like the first couple of lines. Just long enough till Ash kind of catches on. There are some things from childhood that just don't go away. And surprisingly, I think Ash knows every word to this song, just like I do.
Oh, yeah.
Mm-hmm. We had very different childhoods, but this song and everything that goes along with it are things that Ash and I share so close to our hearts. And the kids do too, although I will say we were the OGs. Our generation had it first.
Okay, what's the song? Come on.
I want to be the very best, like no one ever was. Nice. See, you got it on the first line. To catch them is my real test. To train them is my cause. Gotta catch them all, Pokemon.
Listen, from the ages of I would say 11 to 14, I was very highly into Pokemon.
Yes. It's one of the greatest multi-generational card games, cartoons, video games, you name it.
All the new stuff, though.
I was trying not to be polarizing here, Ash.
Our kids are watching the new stuff and they're like, Mom, let us tell you about this new Pokemon. I'm like, that's not a Pokemon. That doesn't count. What is that?
I think because we were the original generation.
I know,
Pokemon.
The first 100,
first 150.
Those are, okay, yeah, those are our Pokemon.
Exactly. I remember when having a Charizard that had 120 hit points was a big deal.
Yeah.
And now our kids are showing me things that are Gigantamax creatures with hit points of 300 or more with amazing attacks. Anyways, I just think it's crazy.
I know. And they wanted so many Pokemon cards for Christmas last year that I went through all of these. And my son is like, but it has to be the one with the most hit points. And I'm looking at these hit points and I'm like, this is not even realistic.
I know. Realistic.
The funny thing is, though, is my brother came over for Christmas too, and he was looking at the kids' new cards and he said the same thing. He's like, what is this?
I know.
So all of us who are the older, what are they doing? No, there cannot be a Pokemon that has that many hit points. That's ridiculous.
Here's the problem. And I think that almost every fantasy universe has this problem. If you want to keep people coming back for more and you want to stay relevant, you have to keep coming up with stronger and cooler things. And they're generally stronger and cooler than the old stuff.
Yeah.
And so I kind of understand where it's coming from. But back to the positives about Pokemon. I think this might be one of my favorite things, is that Pokemon is acceptable in polite society. As no matter your nerdiness level, it's Ash is a total different nerdiness level than me, normally speaking. But regardless of where we are, it's acceptable to be cool with Pokemon. And I love it.
Yeah, I definitely think you can take it too far.
That's probably true.
I'm just saying. But to just have a love of it because of its nostalgia and because it's kind of a fun little universe to escape to sometimes, I'm good with that.
It's so cool. Okay, so let's talk about why I brought up Pokemon. One of my favorite, not my favorite, but I think one of the most interesting Pokemon that is actually still relevant in today's generation is Eevee. Do you remember Eevee?
Yeah.
For those of you who may not be familiar, Ash is not impressed. Eevee. She's Eevee, if you're not familiar with Pokemon, Eevee is this
dog-looking one.
It's this cute little fox.
Oh yeah, I guess fox is a better description. It's like a little yappy dog.
It's like Ron Swanson says that any dog less than 40 pounds is a cat. And so Eevee is definitely in that range. Okay, so there's a lot of people that will have no idea what we're talking about. Pokemon. It's basically this fun game where you get this creature and you train with it and you build a friendship with it. And as you train, it gets stronger and more powerful, and then you battle other traders and their Pokemon. And one of the funnest things about it is trying to make your Pokemon evolve, because they will change the stronger they get. They'll change into stronger and cooler creatures.
And
right?
Eevee can evolve into multiple different things, which is where I thought you were going with this.
Yes.
Because not very many of them have branches of evolution.
Correct.
Like Eevee
Wow.
does.
Wow.
Right?
I did not expect you to just come out with that unprompted. Oh, man. Yes. So that's a perfect description, Ash. And so evolving the Pokemon is super cool, and Eevee is very unique in that nowadays there are 8 different ways that Eevee can evolve.
8?
8.
I think there was 3.
Yep, exactly.
8?
8. Now back, but the original generation, there were 3. Wow. Can you remember what they were?
I'm trying to remember. But are you super impressed?
I am super
I'm pulling
impressed.
this out of my tween and teen years.
So good. Okay. So Eevee, it all depended on what kind of like magical stone that you had. If you had a water stone, it would evolve into a Vaporeon with water powers. If you had a thunder stone, it would evolve into a Jolteon with electric powers. And if you had a fire stone, Eevee would evolve into a Flareon with fire powers. And they all looked super cool and super different. And so it was super fun. Oh, what are you going to evolve your Eevee into? You know, especially when you're playing the Game Boy version, it's just like you had so many choices. And it was really fun. And so this little fox was really interesting in that way. So let's bring it back to Great Basin National Park.
Yes, please. Everybody out there is like, oh, come on, you guys.
I know. Okay. So here's the question. Ash, do you know why they call it Great Basin National Park?
I actually don't. Because it's a giant basin. But there's lots of those in Nevada, so.
Right. Exactly. So why is this place specifically Great Basin? Well, you can actually define Great Basin in 3 different ways, just like Eevee.
Okay.
And so you can define Great Basin geologically, biologically, and hydrographically.
Ooh, that sounds fancy.
I don't know why they didn't just use the word hydrologically, but it would have rhymed better with the other 2.
Yeah.
But they said hydrographically on the national park site and all the research. So we're going to stick with that. So Great Basin, we're going to go through this, but it's the Eevee of the national parks.
What a title.
It's so great. And so rarely does the name of a park have so many hidden implications. And each way you define the Great Basin draws a different map, the smallest of which includes the areas in and slightly outside of Nevada, the largest of which extends down into Texas and Mexico. And so it's really neat. And just like all these different Pokemon start with Eevee, I think it's so cool that you can always bring it back to Great Basin National Park in any way that you're talking about Great Basin. And so let's jump in and start with the geology, the Earth Stone.
Okay.
Fun fact number 1 is that Great Basin National Park is twice as wide as it should be.
Okay.
Now, there are a few reasons for this, and I'll explain what even that means.
Yes, please, because it's not that wide in the first place. Like picturing it in my mind, like, okay, well.
Yes. So it's, as we go through this, you'll find it's really interesting, but it also has some really concerning side effects. So what does it mean when I say it's twice as wide? Well, what I'm saying is that as you drive across Nevada, it really is unnaturally long. And so the North American tectonic plate underneath Great Basin National Park is stretching horizontally east and west. It's stretching so much that scientists believe that unless the stretching stops, in several million years, Great Basin National Park could have a beach. And
What?
yeah, as in
California's just falling off?
Yes.
Because I've heard that my whole life. Everyone's like, don't live in California. It's just going to fall into the ocean.
They weren't far off. Okay.
Okay. So it's the one plate, the North American plate, you're saying, but it's stretching right in this Great Basin area.
Right. Okay. So one thing we need to kind of get, Great Basin National Park is representative of every version and meaning of the term Great Basin. It's like the perfect representation.
Okay, but it's a small national park.
Right.
So when you say the Great Basin, you're talking about the general area, including the park, but beyond.
Correct. Yes.
But that's true of a lot of parks. It's like, you can't protect it all, right? They have to choose a spot to protect. But that doesn't mean that everything around it is just not worth protecting.
Right. And
either.
A lot of times, because the national parks, geology, rocks, a lot of biology, a lot of these ways that we're defining the national park in this area doesn't respect human boundaries.
Right.
And so it can often extend far beyond. And I'm just basically pointing out that Great Basin National Park is a perfect representation of the broader Great Basin area.
Okay. But we are talking, when you say Great Basin, not the national park, you're talking about just the general area where Great Basin is and beyond.
Exactly.
Okay.
And so what I'm talking about, there definitely could be islands, like Great Basin National Park, the park itself, in several million years, if the stretching doesn't stop, it could be an island chain, kind of like Channel Islands. Because North America, the North American tectonic plate really is stretching to the point where it could separate itself off.
That's funny because I really have grown up my whole life, people being like my dad, because he's from California. Nope, never moving back there. It's just going to fall into the ocean someday.
I know. Well, there's so many earthquakes and everything in California. And so I think there especially have a little bit of that mindset where something's happening somewhere.
That's funny. Okay, but it's happening in Great Basin, so
yes, it definitely is.
Great Basin is almost as far east in Nevada as you can go.
Correct.
So, that includes the whole state of Nevada too.
Right.
Falling off into the ocean, pretty much.
Right, exactly. But here's my question: why is it stretching? And there are a couple reasons, and one is interesting and one is scary. And one built the mountains and valleys, and one raised them up. So let's start with the interesting one. We've covered this in plenty of other fun facts episodes, but for a long time, millions of years, the North American tectonic plate and the Pacific plate have been pushing into each other. They even forced another tectonic plate under them towards the center of the Earth as they pushed towards each other, right? We've covered that in other episodes. Well, when tectonic plates push into each other, they smash the land up, crunching it together and building mountains. And there's just a ton of pressure throughout the whole landscape, and it's just really tense and crunched. Well, about 30 million years ago, it seems as though that tectonic pressure not only stopped, but sort of reversed. Not everywhere, just here in the Great Basin area. On the west coast, the plates are still pushing and rubbing against each other. But here, the pressure was reversed so that first the land relaxed and then it stretched out, kind of like a sponge after you squeeze it. It starts to spread itself back out. But what is really crazy is that if you look at a map, the land had a pretty uniform reaction to this stretching action. In order to hold itself together, it's kind of like in PE class when the teacher would line up the class and give everybody a number like 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, and split everybody into teams. The land lined up and everybody took their number. Ones became mountains and twos became valleys. And it's insanely uniform north to south and east to west. If you look at Nevada on Google Maps or something, you'll see that that's the whole state. It's covered in these north to south mountains and valleys. And it's all because of this stretching motion. To visualize kind of how it works, think of it as triangles. Mountains are triangles with the point going up, and valleys are triangles with the point going down. And as the tectonic plate stretches and as the land tried to separate, the triangles are sliding against each other to fill in that space. The mountain triangles would slide up as the valley triangles slide down, and they're able to spread the landscape out while they do this little action. And so that is how Nevada actually became twice as wide and the most mountainous state in the nation. Did you realize that?
No.
It's got the most mountain. There are hundreds of these north-south mountain ranges all across Nevada.
Are you sure?
Yes, there are more mountain ranges like in Nevada than anywhere else. Or like that, I don't know if they're counting it based on number of mountain ranges or if they're counting like the square footage. But if you look at the map, you'll see it almost looks like they kind of compare it to just like a whole bunch of caterpillars like squiggling all over the place. There's tons of these mountain ranges, and they're all going north to south, and they all are surrounded by valleys that go north to south.
Well, now I need to go look at the map. I mean, I'm picturing driving through Nevada because we do that fair amount.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody wants to, but to get from Utah to California.
Right. Well, even when you're driving just out to Great Basin, it's like you pass a mountain and a valley and you're like, are we there? Nope. Another mountain. Are we there? Nope. You just keep passing mountains and valleys.
True. I was thinking like the last time we kind of drove out there, we were going through like Winnemucca and that area. And it's true. Like as you're driving, I remember thinking, here's what I remember thinking when we were driving through Nevada last time. I remember thinking, people always say the state is kind of ugly. Like it's kind of just the hole you have to drive through to get to California. But as I was looking around while we were driving and stuff, I was like, it's actually kind of pretty out here. It's very barren.
Yes.
But there are a lot of mountains. There's a lot of things to look at. They're not tree-covered mountains, but you're just kind of squiggling. And to drive through the state, it's not like a straight shot like you would think if it's as barren as it is, because you do have to squiggle around the mountains.
Right.
And you do. So I actually remember thinking that specifically, like, it's actually kind of pretty here. I actually kind of like driving out here.
Well, especially if you know what's up in the mountains on most of these mountains, which we'll get to.
Okay.
Which we'll get to, and it's super cool. But this, they call it the Basin and Range region, is what they call it. And so this is the largest Great Basin map of the three. You know, it's got almost all of Nevada, it's got Southern Oregon, Idaho, California, large sections of Utah.
So geologically, the Great Basin is huge.
It's huge, but this Great Basin region with the geology and the north-south mountains extends even into Arizona, New Mexico, Texas, and into Mexico.
Okay.
And so it's huge. It's a huge area that is stretching in this way.
Okay.
And so it's really interesting, and you can see it on a map, and it's super interesting. But none of this is scary. I said there were two ways that this is happening, and one was interesting. That was the interesting way. This is the scary way. And this isn't a fun fact or anything, but because it's now double its normal width, the tectonic plate under the Great Basin area is thinner than anywhere else in the lower 48.
Right. That makes sense.
And because it's so thin, it's also so high. Nevada's average elevation is 5,500 feet above sea level.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And it shouldn't be.
Wait, why is it so high? Because it's floating like Colorado?
Okay. Different, but good idea. The reason Nevada is so high is because the land is so thin. The Earth's mantle is hot and wants to rise to the surface.
Melting it?
And normally a thick tectonic plate is enough to weigh down the mantle and keep it far away. But here the land is thin, and because it's thin, the hot magma of the Earth's mantle pushes up on the Great Basin like a giant hot air balloon, pushing the land higher and higher stretching the land out even more and looking for and finding weak spots, of which there are plenty, to the point that 26% of all the geothermal electricity produced in the United States is made in Nevada because of this.
Really?
Yes.
I was going to say there are a lot of hot springs in Nevada that a lot of people don't realize.
Right.
But interesting.
So when you're driving through Nevada, you're closer to the Earth's central core than anywhere else in the lower 48 because it's so thin.
Yeah, that's interesting.
And there are a lot of ancient volcanoes that have erupted because of this.
In Nevada.
And the Great Basin area around the boundaries. Normally, volcanoes show up at like boundary lines of tectonic plates.
Right.
But this is an inland tectonic area that has lots of activity.
Okay, so then I have to pose the question, knowing what I know. I know Nevada has a lot of hot springs and stuff. I did not know they were doing geothermal energy. That's super cool, actually. But also Idaho has a ton of hot springs.
Right.
And then, glaringly obvious, Yellowstone.
Right.
Is that all related?
Yellowstone is not part of the Great Basin area.
Okay.
It's a totally separate geological
phenomenon.
phenomenon.
Soft spot
Yes.
in the plate.
Exactly. But the stretching action does affect a lot that's going on in the Intermountain West.
Okay.
But not really east of the Wasatch Mountains. This is mainly, you'll find the boundary on almost...
And Wasatch Mountains is where we are, Salt Lake City.
Imagine Salt Lake City, where people love to come and ski from the Sierras to Salt Lake City. That is usually the east-west boundary of anything termed Great Basin.
Okay.
And so, but it can go pretty far north to south.
Right.
Which is interesting.
Which would include some Idaho.
Exactly.
Okay.
So there's a lot that's going on that's interesting and maybe a little concerning.
If you love hot springs, Nevada or Idaho, I'm telling you, like ones that you want to swim in, not Yellowstone hot springs.
Exactly. So that's Great Basin geologically. And the national park is like the perfect representation of it. A tall north-south mountain range surrounded by low north-south valleys, all raised to an unnaturally high elevation because there's only a small amount of tectonic plate separating us from the fury that lies beneath.
That elevation of Nevada blows me away.
Yeah.
5,500, that's kind of where we're at. We're a little lower than that. But
I think, so Nevada is ranked number 5 in average elevation.
But that's high.
It's high.
That's very high.
It's super high.
Okay, cool.
Okay, so now let's look at the second way to define Great Basin, and it has to do with water. Fun fact number 2 is that none of the rain or snow that falls here will ever reach the ocean. Not a single drop of water within the hydrographic Great Basin will ever reach the ocean.
No. Everything, everything makes it to the ocean.
Okay, we're going to talk about that. But the Great Basin hydrologically or hydrographically is a 200,000 square mile area where everything either drains internally or evaporates.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, this area stretches from the Sierras to the Wasatch in Utah, where everybody loves to ski, and it includes parts of Oregon, Idaho, but it cuts out all of the other stuff that was down there. But it does include a surprising amount of California. But just think how crazy that is. My whole life, just like you just said, I've been taught that streams connect to creeks, creeks connect to rivers, rivers eventually make it to the sea. Disney and Pixar even taught that to me.
Everybody has said that. Everybody.
I learned from Finding Nemo that all drains lead to the sea. Well, apparently Gil didn't know what he was talking about. And it's a good thing that his dentist office wasn't in Nevada, because the movie would have had a very different ending.
As they all roast in the summer heat.
Yes, there definitely wouldn't have been a sequel. But it's not like this area doesn't have a ton of water, or at least historically hasn't had a ton of water. During the last ice ages, there was so much going on here. Both sides of the Great Basin had huge lakes. Lake Bonneville on the east, on the Utah side. Lake Lahontan covered huge parts of Nevada on the west, and there were glaciers and lakes all over the place. But still, nothing made it to the sea. In the Exploring Great Basin episode, we talked about this. This is fun fact number 3. Great Basin National Park has the last remaining glacier in Nevada.
Mm-hmm.
The Wheeler Peak Glacier, and it carved out a beautiful little cirque out of Wheeler Peak, and you can hike to it, and it's awesome, and it's so fun. But except for one outlying example that I can find, none of the water from that glacier has ever reached the ocean. And all of it has either evaporated or drained down into the earth, as groundwater.
Like to make the formations in Lehman Caves.
Yes. We'll get there.
Okay.
Okay.
Because there has to be water to make those cave formations.
Exactly. And so that's why it's so interesting. There has been, and there still is, a fair amount of water in this area.
But it's all going down into the ground.
Or evaporating.
Or evaporating because it gets really, really hot.
Okay. The one outlying example of this where water from the Great Basin area, and maybe even from this glacier, did actually make it to the sea was when Lake Bonneville, which was huge, it was like a third of Utah, like it burst through the land dam that was holding it in and then made it to the Snake River, and then it mostly drained. But even then, we still have the Great Salt Lake and Sevier Lake, and those ones are the end of the road, right, for lakes and creeks and streams. The water stops there. It either goes down into the groundwater or it evaporates.
That's true, because it wouldn't be the Great Salt Lake if it actually had water movement like a regular lake.
Exactly.
And when you're driving to Great Basin National Park from Utah and you're driving down by Delta, there is another... It's an evaporated Salt Lake.
That's Sevier Lake.
Is that what you said? You'll drive right past it if you're coming from Salt Lake City.
Yep, exactly. And so you have all of these high elevation north-south mountain ranges, but they're trapping in whatever water falls here. And generally speaking, it can't connect to existing watersheds like the Colorado River watershed or the Snake River watershed, and it will never make it to the ocean. And so it collects into these lakes that we've just mentioned, or it goes into groundwater, or it completely evaporates, like that dry lake you just said. And so everywhere else in the country, the water makes it to the ocean, but not here.
That is so cool.
It is so cool.
I'm like aghast. My mind is going through all the different scenarios and just like, well, what about this place? And what about this? And
yep, exactly.
It's crazy.
But there's actually some really interesting ramifications if you know where to look. And you brought it up. The place to look is underground.
Right.
Lehman Caves. In 1885, Absalom Lehman, which just reminds me of Alice in Wonderland. I love Alan Rickman's character, Absalom. Anyways, he discovered what we now call Lehman Caves. It's a beautifully decorated cave, and if you like cave formations, you will love Lehman Caves. It's got stalactites and stalagmites and helictites and cave popcorn. But there's one formation that makes it extra special.
I know. I was so giddy
over
this formation.
And they're called cave shields. And they're relatively rare. You won't find them in most places. And this is fun fact number 4. Lehman Caves at Great Basin National Park has over 500 of them.
It's not a very big area either.
No.
That's what's insane. It's not like you're looking at like Mammoth Cave with 400 miles of cave.
Right. I think this is only a 2-mile cave.
Yeah, if even.
And so 500 of these things, and they look exactly as they sound. They're just these giant, round, shield-shaped cave draperies. And they're just, so they're large.
It's
and
like you could
them
pull
all in.
it off the wall and use it as a shield. It literally looks like a shield.
Yeah.
That's why I love them so much, because it's like you get in there and you just kind of look at it and you tweak your head and it looks like somebody put a shield into the wall, like sticking out of the wall, not straight up against it.
Right.
Sticking out of the wall, and then covered it in a little layer of rock. That's what it looks like.
And they don't even know necessarily how they exactly form. Like there's still some mystery there, which is really interesting. But the cave formed because of groundwater, which is all about Great Basin. Great Basin, that's where the water goes.
Right.
It's in the ground. So it's just so interesting. At some point, a long, long time ago, and they think even up to 500 million years ago, they think that the groundwater started seeping into the limestone where Great Basin National Park's Lehman Caves are right now. And when groundwater seeps into limestone, a lot of times it kind of picks up some carbonic acid or something like that. Basically what happens is it starts to dissolve the limestone. And that's kind of what happened here with Lehman Caves.
Well, and that's a very typical way to form a cave. That's how most caves form.
Correct.
And that's why when we went to Mammoth Cave this last time, we went on a very heavily geological tour.
Right.
Which is not my favorite, I'm not going to lie, because I just don't understand a lot of it. But what he talked about that I didn't really realize is that Mammoth Cave was formed by rivers basically under the ground that are clearing out these massive, passageways.
Right. There's a couple different kinds of ways that the groundwater or the water systems can carve the caves. A lot of caves, like I think Mammoth Cave, I get the terms mixed up, but I think it's epigenic, where they say that it's basically the carving water is connected to water systems on the surface.
Yeah.
And so a lot of caves like this one.
A lot of caves out here, especially because you don't have big river systems.
Correct.
Going through. They are the water mixed with the carbonic acid that just slowly dissolves away the rock.
Right. And sometimes it even gets even more acidic than carbonic acid, which is basically just like soda water.
It's like soda water, yeah.
And so sometimes it can get like sulfuric acid acidity levels, and that'll eat away faster and things like that. But the water table at some point was high enough that it all kind of it started eating away at the limestone here. And then maybe as the land started to stretch and get raised, the water table dropped. And when the water table dropped, that action of carving out and eating away at the limestone stopped. And then you're left with this blank slate, basically. But because so much water here in the Great Basin area just goes down into the ground, that's where you get the decorating period for these caves.
Right.
The water from the surface, from these glaciers or whatever it is, goes down, it accumulates.
Not rain.
Yeah, exactly.
No, just kidding. It gets some rain.
Some rain, some snow. But it goes down, it seeps in through the ground, it picks up some minerals. Sometimes it even, starts dissolving things as it goes. But then when it hits the cave, it interacts with the air in the cave. And then it starts to dry and drip and drain into the cave. And then it dries and you have these awesome formations, the shield formations, the stalactites, the stalagmites.
Well, you mentioned halictites, which are another very rare cave formation.
Yes.
That they have there, because they had halictites. There's tons of halictites at Timpanogos Cave where I worked as a park ranger. That's kind of like that cave's glory is a whole room full of halictites.
Exactly.
But yeah, I mean, a lot of these formations, and as you mentioned, the shields, and especially the sheer number of shields that you can see here, is so unique and so special.
Yes, exactly. And it's all because of the magic of the water of the Great Basin, the hydrographic Great Basin.
I guess I never thought of why there would be caves out there.
Yeah, it's so interesting. And so, but that's number 2. That's the second way of defining the Great Basin. And water is so interesting. You drive through Nevada and you don't see any of it, and so you don't think it even applies. But there's so much going on with water in this area.
I still mind blown that water doesn't make it to the ocean.
Yeah.
Mind blown.
Okay, so let's talk about the third way to define the Great Basin. Biologically, the Great Basin Desert is a very specific place biologically. And we've gone through the geology and we've gone through the hydrology of this place. And both of those things greatly impact what can live here. It's actually an extremely harsh place. Long, hot, dry valleys with tall, generally still hot and dry mountains. the Great Basin Desert only gets between 6 and 12 inches of rain every year, with most of that falling in the mountains. But this desert is incredibly diverse. The valleys are seas of sagebrush, basically. They're just oceans of desert.
Which is John's favorite.
Yes.
He loves sagebrush.
Oh my gosh. I've trained my children.
We can't gloss over that because how many times have you made me stop and smell the sagebrush?
Okay, but you can't just smell them. You actually have to touch the leaves of the sagebrush and then smell your hand.
And rub it. Yeah, you kind of rub the leaves with your fingertips and then you put it up to your nose and you smell it. How many times have I had to do that in my lifetime since I married you?
I know. And our kids are perfectly well trained.
They are.
To recognize if it doesn't smell good on your fingers, it's not sagebrush. And so I love the Great Basin Desert for this. Okay. But you have all of these harsh and rugged desert shrubs. But as you go up into the mountains, everything changes. You know, the sagebrush slowly turns into junipers. The junipers turn into pinyon pines. And then suddenly you're surrounded by aspens.
Which is my favorite part of Great Basin.
Yes.
Those aspens.
Oh my gosh. And you would never imagine when you're on the bottom of the mountains in the valleys, you would never imagine what's at the top of the mountains.
No. Like the first time you visit, you will just, my thought, the first time we got to Great Basin and we drove up the Wheeler Peak Scenic Drive and we got up to the top, it's 10,000 feet above sea level. Like you're right up in the mountain. And my first thought was, why have I never been here before? What took me so long? Because you don't even think it's going to be like that.
I know.
Not even a little bit. We
I know.
can tell you that there are aspens up there, but until you've driven through the Nevada wilderness,
yeah,
you know, as you're getting to this park, you're just looking around going, nah, I don't really have a good feeling about this. Where are we going? Are we ever going to get there? And why did we decide to come here?
Yes.
And you get there. And even when you get there, you're looking at it going,
I know. It's true. You're like, these are, back to Star Wars, these are not the droids you're looking for. You want to go and rethink your life, you know?
I know. And so, and you're down there and you're like, okay, this is interesting. And then you drive up and it only takes, I don't know, 20 minutes, 30 minutes possibly to drive up the Wheeler Peak Scenic Drive. And then you get out and then your jaw hits the floor because it's like, there's no way that it looks like this in the middle of the Nevada desert.
I know.
No freaking way.
I know. But what's so cool is that Great Basin National Park, where you're having this experience, is like the perfect representation of the Great Basin Desert. You'll have these incredibly hot and desolate deserts. And then you'll have these island mountain sanctuaries. And all of the plants and animals, you know, in the sanctuary part need a lot more help, you know, compared to what you get in the valley bottoms. But it's my favorite. I don't know. It's just so cool. It's a night and day difference. But all throughout Nevada, all throughout the Great Basin area and region, you'll have this exact experience if you can access the tops of the mountains.
It makes you rethink everything you're seeing because on the surface, it looks like just a dry, desolate wasteland.
Right.
And then knowing what you know after you've been to Great Basin and knowing that if I just like gain 5,000 feet of elevation and get up into this mountain, it's a totally different ecosystem. It looks completely different than what you would ever imagine.
Exactly.
And then you're exactly right. Like when you drive through the next time or when you're passing through somewhere desolate like that, you look at it differently because I know for me, like when we drove through, I mentioned this last time, and I was looking at those big mountains and I was like, I wonder if that's like at Wheeler Peak in Great Basin, where it's like, that's a pretty big mountain over there.
Right.
I wonder what's up there. And you'll never know because there's no road. I mean, there's nothing.
Yeah.
How cool is that?
But I think that experience that you mentioned earlier, driving through Nevada and thinking, this place is actually really pretty. I think you can only have that experience if you recognize that there's so much hidden.
You've got to go to Great Basin.
I know. You have to go to Great Basin National Park. Okay. But my favorite living thing in Great Basin is the Great Basin Bristlecone Pine.
Yes, which we did talk about extensively in the Exploring Great Basin episode.
Yes, but we weren't specific enough.
We were trying not to give away too much before we got to the fun facts, because
I know.
like, these trees are incredible. They're so cool.
Yes.
And we're like trying to like talk about it without giving away all the cool stuff.
I know.
So I hope you're hitting the cool stuff.
Yes, I am, and it's going to be awesome. But I'm saying the Great Basin bristlecone pine on purpose because there are a few different kinds of bristlecone, but none are as cool as the Great Basin bristlecone. And this is fun fact number 5. Great Basin National Park has 3 groves of Great Basin bristlecones, the longest living non-clonal organism on Earth.
So yeah. So they're not including Pando, basically, is what they're saying.
Exactly. I have to specify non-clonal because plants like aspens cheat by cloning themselves through the roots like Senator Palpatine on Star Wars. It's cheating. Okay.
It is actually, if you've ever heard of Pando, and that's another place in Utah, but it's just it's basically like they say it's like super, super old. They say it's the oldest.
They call it Pando, but it's a grove of aspens that is one organism.
Yeah, that just keeps reproducing aspens.
It keeps cloning itself.
It does. And I remember when I learned about that, and I was like, I do think that's cheating.
Yes.
Like, that's how it felt to me, too.
I know.
Like, no, that seems like cheating if I'm not looking at the same tree.
I know.
Necessarily. Like, some of them have died.
Yes, lots of them have died.
Yeah.
It's a huge aspen grove.
But that's not the case with these bristlecone pines. Like, what you see is that, and this is what's crazy, it's the same tree that's been there for thousands of years.
Yeah, and has one life.
Yeah.
One life, and it's not cheating.
And it doesn't reclone itself. And it looks really old.
Yes. These Great Basin bristlecones specifically can live more than 5,000 years. And that is absolutely insane. Take a moment to just realize how long 5,000 years is for a second. We're talking about plants that have basically lived through almost all of human recorded history. Okay?
God created Adam and Eve, and then he created the Great Basin bristlecone.
No, it's the other way around. In the Bible, I think, at least. In Genesis, I think it's the trees, and then he made Adam and Eve.
I know. Adam and Eve, you said human recorded history. So
yes.
I was just saying, Adam, Eve, and the bristlecone pine.
Yes, I love that idea. Oh my gosh. But they're so long living. But what makes it even more amazing, and what we didn't talk about last time, is that the longest living bristlecones live in the worst possible conditions. Mm-hmm. I saw this meme the other day where it was making fun of my gardening experience. I'm like trying to get a flower to survive. I'm giving it everything it needs. I'm planting it in the best soil. I'm giving it plenty of sun and giving it water, and I can't even keep it alive. And then right next to it, it shows like an image of a dandelion, and it's got a little thought bubble that says, cement, And it's like alive and perfectly thriving in the cracks of the sidewalk, Anyways, they have studied bristlecone pine trees, and you know where they do the best? Basically pure limestone. They break it down just a little bit so it's not just like a pure rock slab, but basically just keep it pure limestone rocks and limestone soil, and these trees don't just live for 1,000 years, over 5,000 years easy. For these trees. So the bristlecone pine forest that is the easiest to get to, because I did know there were multiples. We've not been to the other two, though. Right. They're very hard. They're hard to get to. Right. But this one is actually pretty easy to get to. You just have to hike a few miles. But I remember the first time we went up there, and it was like you're looking around and you're hiking through a scree field, basically. Like, it's just rock. Right. It's just rock everywhere. It's the worst kind of hiking. That's why I remember this. Because I hate hiking through stuff like that. But it was like, you really do. You kind of look around and you're like, why are there trees here? I know. It's crazy. And they've found that the bristlecones in more traditionally desirable locations where there's actual soil and water, and they don't live as long.
Isn't that just like a lesson for life?
I know. It's so great.
That should be, we've talked about like those inspirational posters, like those HR posters.
I know.
The
It's like
clinical ones. It's like they should just put a picture of a bristlecone and be like, hardness.
never give up,
Yeah.
never surrender. Or like, let's see if we can, how many movies we can add in here. It's like Rocky. It's not about how hard you can hit. It's about how hard you can get hit and keep moving forward, you know? So it's absolutely the greatest example of endurance.
Yeah.
Of just like taking what comes and making do, you know?
I gotta say, and I think that's probably why we love these trees so much, knowing what we know about them.
Mm-hmm.
But, and we don't talk about this a lot, but that concept and being there and witnessing it firsthand, I feel like is the reason that nature heals.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it heals us while we're out there.
Right.
Because you can't look at a tree that has a little plaque next to it saying this tree has been here since Jesus, basically.
Right.
You can't look at that tree and not feel like something stirring in your soul saying, you know what? I can do hard things, or I can,
Right. Just like this tree, I was built for hard times.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why it's just so important to go outside and to be in these places, because that is not something that you can get from looking at your screen.
Nope.
Or from, just working in a cubicle. There is something so precious about standing on a mountain and seeing a tree that is thousands of years old.
Oh, yeah.
And saying, like, you don't even have to know what you're looking at to feel like some stirrings.
Right.
Of like, wow.
I know. But like, as they've studied these trees, sometimes the conditions are so difficult that they don't even have a growth ring. And so it's like years of no rain, years of extreme heat, winters of unimaginable cold, year after year after year. And yet, right?
Right.
It's so cool. Oh,
I
my
know.
God.
It really is. It's like going to Yosemite and seeing those big giant granite cliffs for the first time, or like going to Yellowstone and realizing you're just like 1 second away from a major explosion of epic proportions. And like, I talked about in the Mount Rainier episode how healing it was for me when I hiked to Comet Falls because of some things that were going on. And then this too, I would say, is one of the greatest examples for me of just being hardy and persistent and enduring and just dealing with the crap that you have to deal with and still standing strong and being there for the long haul.
Right.
So I truly, these are my favorite trees because they make me feel strong when I see them.
Yep. Which is why I planted one in our backyard.
But ours has good soil and good water, so apparently it's not going to live as long.
Right. But it'll still outlive us by quite a while. Oh, my gosh. But anyway, so that concludes our Pokemon-focused part of today's episode. We talked about the 3 different ways, geologically, hydrographically, and biologically. The ways that Great Basin National Park is the perfect representation of the larger Great Basin areas. But that bristlecone note is really interesting. And we're going to head into our final fun fact kind of
a bonus?
Yes.
We get 6?
Yes. We're going to head into this final and bonus fun fact kind of on the coattails of the bristlecone, what we're feeling, basically. And as you appreciate the bristlecones, you imagine how far back into our past they go. They go back beyond so much, beyond the release of the last iPhone, or Y2K, before America was even discovered, before Rome, before Jerusalem. It reminded me of one of my favorite movies as a kid, Dragonheart. Did you ever see that movie?
I actually did. That was a family movie.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
It came out in 1996 when I was 10 years old. And Dennis Quaid is the main character, and he's a dragon slayer named Bowen. And Sean Connery is Draco the dragon, but he's the last dragon. And I probably watched this movie about 1,000 times. It's so good. At the beginning of the movie, Dennis Quaid is like this cynical old mercenary who hunts down dragons. He doesn't know it, but when he found Draco or Sean Connery, that's like the end of the road as a dragon slayer. I'm not going to spoil the ending for you, but fast forward to the end of the movie, they've become friends and they go into battle together. And in a pivotal scene, Bowen looks at his now beloved dragon friend and says, "Without you, Draco, where do we turn?" To which Draco responds in his most amazing Sean Connery voice, "To the stars, Bowen, to the stars." And the stars are the most amazing thing. And it's incredible when you look at the stars. I think it's the only thing that you can do this specific thing at. When you look at the stars, not only are you looking at our past, but you're simultaneously looking at our future too. And it's kind of far out, but it's an amazing thing. The night skies here at Great Basin National Park are second to none. And this location is so far from everything that it has basically no light pollution. It's extremely dry and high in elevation, so the air is thin and clear, so you get just this amazing night sky. And we talked about all the ways that you can experience the night skies in our other episode. Mm-hmm. But people recognized the opportunity here in Great Basin, and this brings us to the final bonus fun fact. Fun fact number 6 is that Great Basin National Park has the first and only research-grade observatory ever built in a U.S. national park.
I know, and I'm like trying to think of where it is.
Yeah.
Like I haven't seen it.
It's because it's not really accessible to you and me.
I know. I want to see it. It is so cool, though.
But in 2015, they built the Great Basin Observatory, and it's at an elevation of like 6,800 feet. And they do amazing work here, and I just wanted to highlight some of the cool things that they do here. The observatory is partnered with 2 universities, the University of Nevada, Reno, and Southern Utah University. And they have some really cool projects. One of their main focuses is double stars. Okay? If you look at the sky, you can't tell with your naked eye. Basically, if one little dot that you're seeing shining up there is one star, a galaxy, multiple stars, you can't tell. But if you've used this observatory's telescope, you can really zoom in and see if it's multiple things in one shiny dot.
Right.
Basically. But what they study here is so cool. In their study of double stars, they also are trying to figure out if it's just where our planet is at this moment, if those 2 stars just happen to line up. Okay? Because they're also looking to see if maybe those are 2 stars that are orbiting each other. Or maybe those 2 stars are a star and a black hole. Or maybe it's 2 stars and one of them is eating the other star. Or maybe they're going to crash into each other and all kinds of things. And so they're learning all of these different things through the use of this observatory in Great Basin National Park. But I think that the thing that is the coolest that they study from this observatory is their study of exoplanets. They're trying to find planets that orbit around stars. Because 3 different things. They want to learn how solar systems form. They want to then apply how that applies to our own solar system. But then they also are seeing if these exoplanets that they're finding could be habitable. So they're seeing maybe humans via Elon Musk's SpaceX or whatever, we could go to that star, or maybe there's life on that star already. And so first things first, we have to discover these exoplanets. And that's what they're doing here at Great Basin National Park.
I know you're so excited because that just opens up all the possibilities of Star Trek and Star Wars.
Oh my gosh, it does.
All the things you love so much.
I know. These are the voyages of the Starship Enterprise. Its continuing mission to find the exoplanets that we found from Great Basin National Park. To seek out new life and new civilizations and to boldly go where no one has gone before. It's just so cool.
Truthfully, if you want to see the best stars you've ever seen, go to Great Basin.
Yes. It's a great place to appreciate the past by, things like the Bristlecone Pine. And it's a great place to stop and contemplate the future and where we're going. And it's just a great place in general for self-contemplation, I think. Mm-hmm. And so I love Great Basin National Park. And that concludes our tour of the fun facts here at Great Basin.
So now it's time for your task for today. We want you to go over to the Dirt in My Shoes Facebook or Instagram page. Please follow us along there. We share a lot of really fun stuff over there.
Right.
But we want you to head over to the Dirt in My Shoes Facebook or Instagram page and tell us which EV, which of the three you're most excited about or you were most surprised about.
Correct. So that brings us back to the first few fun facts. So fun fact number 1 is that Great Basin National Park is twice as wide as it should be.
That it's so thin that the mantle is right there.
Exactly. Fun fact number 2, that none of the rain or snow that falls here will ever reach the ocean.
That's my choice. I cannot get over that one.
I know. That was crazy. Or is it that Great Basin National Park has 3 groves of Great Basin Bristlecone Pines?
Yeah. So we'll share some pictures and some info over on our socials, and we would love for you to chime in there.
Yes, but thank you so much for joining us today. We super appreciate you. We would also love it if you'd give the Exploring the National Parks podcast a 5-star review. It really helps us out, and we would really appreciate that.
Now, don't forget to go eat a ton of turkey this weekend and get some dirt in your shoes.